And so it is that we're here, privileged to have witnessed 2023, its glorious and gory sides, and have the favor to see its end. Hello and welcome. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf, and I'm truly delighted to serve you tonight a potpourri of interviews hosted on hard copy this year, but curated to highlight some of the significant events we've witnessed through 2023. Of course, the 2023 election was a conversation starter in many gatherings. As a matter of fact, the consequences of these elections are still a part of discussions, but preceding them was a dire matter which has reared its head again, the issue of Naira scarcity. It is unprecedented, but at the beginning of this year, just as is happening at the end of the year, Nigeria's currency, the Naira, was scarce, and the Catholic Bishops' Conference of Nigeria were very concerned. They issued a communique where they asked for Section 2 of the Constitution to be justiciable, and on hard copy, we spoke to one of their prominent colleagues on the significance of their call.
Government is trying to build confidence in ordinary people, because if these things don't fall in place, it's enough indicator of voter suppression. Because if people don't, nobody is going to start looking for money just to go and cast a vote. And if people have a choice between going to find money and going to cast a vote, they will choose going to find money. So I'm prayerfully hoping that the government can very, very quickly resolve some of these issues. And these were the sentiments that we tried to express in our communique.
Well, you might have been shielded from looking for Naira notes, but I don't think that you were shielded from the news. You were following developments this week as well. I mean, the violence in some states might not have missed you, and also the fact that the president made a broadcast yesterday morning, which is interesting because it was yesterday you concluded your conference. I'm wondering, what effect did you think that the president's broadcast have on the mood of the nation? Look,
you know, there's just been a triangle of uncertainty. The Supreme Court saying one thing, Central Bank Governor saying one thing, President saying one thing. Either way, whatever anybody may have to say in terms of law and process, people are looking for Naira. Can they find it? It really should not be the business of Nigerians wondering, did the president think through all of these things, and did he? I mean, you're dealing with over 200 million people, so every policy decision that a government must take will have to deal with the fact that there are, first of all, millions and millions of people that you cannot reach. This is a country where over 60–70% of the population are, will you call them, living in ungoverned spaces where there's really hardly any government presence. So if you're going to take such very serious decisions, you must factor all these things in. And as I said, given the factors, given the environment we're in now, and given the fact that fake news, uncertainty can trigger anything and everything, you saw people posting all kinds of things, pictures of an imaginary central bank office burning somewhere, which really was not the case. So I think the government just purely and simply has to get its act together. For me, the critical thing is that democracy is not going to grow as a result of goodwill and good intention. It's not about good people being, coming to power. A lot of these people who are in power, they're very good people. They're very good people. But they're allowing a lot of horrible things to happen. And that is largely because very often, we had an old man, who was a priest in Ireland. He's dead now, but he used to work in the cathedral. So during confessions, he had one bad air. So most people used to go to him for confession, and they choose to confess on his ear that couldn't hear. But
that was the ear he presented
very well. So we have to keep worrying these people. Let me put it that you have to keep worrying them.
While Nigerians were looking for scarce Naira notes, the presidential candidates in the approaching elections were off to London, marketing themselves at the Royal Institute of International Affairs, also known as the Chatham House. This was a talking point back home in Nigeria. We had a top diplomat on the program who explained why this was important.
I am representing a number of companies who want to invest or already working in Nigeria. I'm a consultant to them, meaning I'm here to understand how we will deal with Nigeria post the Buhari administration.
That's Ambassador Paul Albright.
You know, so it's being present at that place and a number of others means that they are representing British companies, they are listening to Nigerian leaders, and they are going to advise and make recommendations to...
But would they're not going to vote in this election?
No. Listen, they are not going to vote. And here's the difference. They are preparing themselves for post-Buhari Nigeria. So they want to know the leaders they'll be dealing with. They want to know the people they'll be dealing with. They want to know the policies you will enunciate when you become the president.
The planes to London might have been busy, but so were Labour leaders back home who were setting their own agenda for the presidential candidates. The Nigeria Labour Congress, which witnessed a transition of its own in February, began to fill its bucket list. So did the Trade Union Congress, who were quite anxious about the government's stance on petrol subsidies.
We can't be standing aloof while people are suffering, people are dying, people are stripping themselves naked in banks looking for money. That is unacceptable.
Well, I'm just curious. Oftentimes when the NLC talks about an action, most people's minds oftentimes go to a strike action, and they think that the times are delicate. I mean, considering the fact that we have an election at hand, and it's supposed to happen on the 25th of this month, and they fear that, you know, if things do not normalize, they hope it will. We're all hopeful that it will. They think that, you know, a strike action will only worsen things.
We are conscious of that, and we discussed that, you know, extensively, because we felt that, you know, some people, maybe fifth columnists, might equally be acting a script for us to fall into. I think we are more intelligent than that, you know, but who will take an appropriate action that the people who are responsible for this, you know, will get it clear. So they will not come at the eve of election, you know, to come up with some policies, you know, that they will eventually be the beneficiaries. They will not.
The greatest constraint and the greatest problem is government. Government is still living as if there is no problem in the country. They are still spending whatsoever. They vote money to they put money in security votes. At the end, you don't know how they spend it. So that is why the conversation is difficult. Like as I have said in this studio at a particular time, that is just like a man that is telling his children that there's no money at home, that we need to tighten our belt. But this man, at the end of the day, he is spending money in things that doesn't matter. So the kids will tell Daddy, no, what you are telling us is not true. So now, coming back home to your question, I think as well that that the position as canvassed is also correct, depending on the data that you are looking at. Fuel subsidy removal is not exactly equal to increment in pricing. It depends on the price of crude oil. If crude oil today in international market is selling at about $40 per barrel, then we will not be paying any subsidy today. But because of the price of crude oil, that is why we are paying subsidy today.
While Labour leaders were setting the agenda, the federal government under President Buhari was planning to take an $800 million loan to cushion an eventual subsidy removal. There was big talk around accountability stemming from similar loans the federal government had taken before for palliatives.
I can say that, yes, this has helped increase enrollment in school and have ensured that we've reduced the numbers of out-of-school children at that time. Yes, I can also say that people benefited from the conditional cash transfer. But when you talk about COVID, government failed, you know, government failed because up till now, they cannot tell us what they did with the COVID money and who actually benefited from the COVID money. And that's why, for me, it's about closing these gaps and these leakages beyond collecting 800 million naira. Because it's only 800 million naira that we know about. There are other intervention and other loans that government would collect and have been collecting that it's not in the public domain. So for me, it's how can we put in place mechanism that curbs corruption and those leakages, and this money would not go and find herself in personal pockets or pockets of cronies of people around.
You personalize the money. It's herself. I don't know why your money has to be a woman. Just wondering. Oh, well. So he said that when it comes to COVID, and I'm referring to the collaboration, I'm trying to remember the name now. CTAP. Yes. What did you find with CTAP?
I think with CTAP, it starts from the fact that if your procurement systems are not effective, not properly structured before an emergency situation, it does not get better. The potential that it could get worse. Because the speed at which you have to spend money means that you now have to jump over a lot of procedures. And in that means even now even opens opportunities for corruption. And then what I'm saying that there needs to be a proper audit. A lot of money, in trillions of naira, from the federal government, also from the CBN, was spent as COVID-19 palliative through different fronts. And no one has been able to provide a proper audited statement. And that's something we didn't do. Or even an evaluation of the process, even including the social safety net or the home school feeding, to read something or maybe of a proper detailed research about what exactly has been the importance or the transformative power of these things that are happening. I really feel that we're not following process in all of these things. What should be ahead of us doing a palliative program or social program is an identity system. That's what we should have first figured out. A proper identity system that even forms the basis of creating a social contract.
The elections eventually happened, and cracks that had seemed minor became major gulfs after the result viewing portal of the election management body failed to live up to expectation. The nation was sore and in dire need of healing in the immediate aftermath of the polls.
Consider the fact that we fought a civil war that we are yet to fully recover from. This was an opportunity for the PDP to have given Nigerians the opportunity now to actually have a Nigerian president of Southeast extraction who was also acceptable across board. And that was interesting about Mr. P2B. Mr. P2B enjoyed a lot of support because of his own personal integrity, because of his qualities, leadership qualities that are considered as germane for a country in financial distress such as Nigeria. And so the PDP failed to take advantage of that to field a popular candidate from the Southeast and use their structure across the country to support him to emerge. That failure has cost the party this election. But the Southeast simply made a statement that we can no longer be taken for granted any longer. And that is one thing that the president-elect must ponder on and move quickly to assuage their feelings and make sure he runs an all-inclusive government that gives that region a sense of belonging so that they can be reconciled with the Nigerian state, which is their own country. To look at their programs of action for government, what was it that they campaigned with that got Nigerians to vote for them so massively? He needs to now merge it with his own vision for Nigeria and make sure you come up with something that is like a safe compromise that can have the confidence of all of Nigerians and can be implemented incrementally to yield dividends of democracy in terms of improved welfare and security almost immediately. And so you will need all hands to be on deck, as well as the ideas from these co-contestants. But for him to achieve that, he must have a very peaceful and conciliatory disposition from now henceforth.
For a number of people, they say that what they have a problem with is the process. That they would have been able to accept this if the process was a little bit more transparent.
And that's why INEC need to take responsibility for this going into the next elections.
Exactly. We're going into the governorship elections. What major lesson, what major factor do you think INEC really needs to work on?
INEC should endeavor in this next election to transmit results as they promised in real time so that people can monitor and avoid some of these legitimacy crises we are seeing now.
You know, there was a lot about character in the last elections, morality, ethics. We don't even expect it, you know, and therefore there's this complicity between the politicians and the electorate, you know, on how Nigerian politics would be. You know, so they're willing to give, to buy votes. The electorate is willing to sell, you know. And so we have descended into this shameful, I would say, level of the public conduct, of the conduct of our public institutions. It's just so low. It's so low. And for me, everything is connected.
Politics was certainly a major player, and while Nigeria was coming to terms with the aftermath of the polls, the main opposition People's Democratic Party was also contending with divisions of its own.
Some people say suspend Wiki, sack Wiki. I think they do that at their own peril. You see, the first thing in your family, even when you have extreme situation in differences, is not to drive your wife or drive your husband. Wike is a force in the PDP and beyond the PDP that you can't ignore. So you ignore Wike, you sack Wike, you fight Wike at your own peril. He's a man of capacity. So, but let me leave Wike in the instance. For me, the PDP needs to overhaul itself. And let me commend the acting national chairman. From my findings, all efforts are there to push him to touch people like Wiki, to touch people like me. He has exercised restraint. Don't forget the tenure of the current working committee. Ordinarily is 4 years. They've spent almost 2 years. So what is the driving force? What is left in the PDP? My findings confirm that the party can pay salaries now, because it is the like of Wike and others that were supporting the party to take up certain responsibilities. So for me, my advice is for the party to call for truth submission, where everybody will come and bear your mind, tell them what went wrong, why did you get angry with the party, how can we move forward? You understand?
We saw an attempt at that. I think it was in Bauchi State, where, there was a gathering of stalwarts and everybody was supposed to be bearing their mind. That didn't end up very well, did it?
I think it's a forum of calling people you want to call. I give it all and due respect to the governor of Bauchi State. But let me say to you, myself and a number of other people in the party who feels aggrieved would be a good thing for the party itself to look out for everybody, not a section.
Nigeria is not a country in isolation, and so when coups broke out in the West African region where she is dominant, it was only right that we had some intervention on it.
What kind of leadership tells you this is democratic? What is democratic about France forcing African countries, bullying African countries into giving up their financial resources? My daughter, answer me. What is democratic about that? What is democratic about France occupying African countries without their authority? What is democratic about France taking natural resources out of Africa? 90%, 95% of Niger's lithium is powering Europe and France. What is democratic about that? So you're saying, oh, forget that democracy. Let's just concentrate on this little bitty democracy. It is stupid. It goes back to the colonized mind. It doesn't make any sense. Before we can talk about democracy in Africa, let's practice democracy from an international point of view. Africa is not going to Europe to steal from anybody. Africa is not going to Europe to invade anybody. Let's go there first. So before you can talk about that, tell me why 90% of Niger is not electrified when their electricity, their lithium, is powering Europe. Answer that. Now we can talk about democracy. Let's not be stupid. Reality is, what is happening in Niger is those students in that dining room. It's now a mutiny. They want to keep their lunch. They're saying this time is going to be different. We just want to keep our lunch.
Not all fires burn brightly. Others are simmering coals, preferring the language of advocacy. Hard Copy was pleased to host Nobel laureate Malala Yousafzai, who celebrated her day in Nigeria this year.
Is there a particular reason why you've chosen Nigeria? I'm in Nigeria because Nigeria has one of the highest number of out-of-school girls. And at the same time, Nigeria was also one of the first few countries where we started our program through Malala Fund. Right now, we have a group of advocates for education consisting of more than 20 organizations and partners, and we work in 9 states here. We have invested up to $6.1 million, and we have a commitment of $2 million towards these education programs. We work with girls advocates, we work with education advocates, and it's incredible to see that work. So I wanted to bring attention to that. And Nigeria is also at a very critical stage because we have a newly formed government now, and they will be deciding the next this government's plan, and they'll be deciding the budget as well. And it's really important for us to remind them that they remember that girls should not be left behind, and I hope that they make girls a priority. And we are asking them at the state and federal level to make financial commitment towards education, 4% of the GDP and 22.5% of their budget towards education. And then in addition to that, make it gender inclusive, make sure that the policies in these legislations are taken from the gender lens as well, so we can address the specific challenges that girls face. In addition to that, it's also important that every state and the federal government ensure that they promise a complete education to every child in Nigeria. In some states, it's only up to 9 years. So we need to make sure that it goes up to 12 years of complete education. The senior secondary schooling is important because we see a huge dropout of girls at that stage. So for girls to have access to a complete school education, it will ensure that that they don't drop out because of the financial reasons. So a free, complete education is what I hope for in Nigeria.
Whatever division there was didn't rear its head at the National Parliament, where the 10th National Assembly was inaugurated after elected representatives had been given their certificate of return. We hosted a few of the first-timers here on Hard Copy.
Being the House of Rep member doesn't come free. We have people at home who believe, especially from where I am from, where people don't have so much doing. The majority of their livelihood is dependent on that young guy that's sent to the Federal House of Representatives or State House of Assembly to represent them, or probably got an appointment as a commissioner. Actually, you'll be surprised that half of my constituency, from the day I was sworn in as a member of House of Reps, to make laws for them. They don't believe my soul or my responsibility is just to make laws for them. They believe that I have to pick up responsibilities back at home, and the little that we earn from here is what we take back home.
Interesting resolution the Senate adopted this week, asking the National Universities Commission to prioritize building hostels for female undergraduates so as to reduce the spate of abductions. It's an area that hasn't really been given thought to when you look at how it eventually affects the probability of whether or not a woman will complete, especially a young woman, will complete her education in areas largely considered insecure. I'm just wondering how you got your fellow senators to queue up behind you on this.
Well, it was logical. I appealed to the fact that you have daughters, wives, sisters, and if none of those, every one of them has a mother or has had at some point in time. And I appeal to the fact that how would they feel if she's beaten or raped or abducted? So it is important. Stopping this scourge is not just up to women alone. It's up to the whole society. It's a national issue. And based on that, I'm happy to say that every senator that came to the chambers today wore a muffler in solidarity with the fight against gender-based violence.
Every single guest we've hosted on this program has been a special privilege for us, particularly in the year 2023. And it's been even more delightful to have you watch us all through the year. It's a privilege we do not take for granted and wish to thank you in particular for. We ask that you stay with us through the year 2024 as we continue to keep our conversations frank and forthright. On behalf of all of the team here at Hard Copy, thank you for watching and cheers to a beautiful 2024. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Good night.